Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Team Galaxy Brain YouTube channel, or welcome if this is your first video. My name is Premium Chad, aka that root beer can that you left sitting out last night, and welcome to my Orfist deck profile. I'm sorry for any lack of interesting background. I am currently still on vacation, so you're gonna have to do with this for the time being. I promise that I'll be back in my room and it will look a lot more interesting about a week from now, but I will be making weekly content from this point forward while I work on my big videos, and this is going to be one of those filler videos. Orfist, as many of you know, is one of the decks that I consider to be probably the most fun in the entire format. I love the aesthetic, I love the playstyle, it has many different ways you can build it, and one of those builds will be showcased here today. This, of course, is for set 2 of the overdress format, so if you have a set 1 deck, all you need to know is that you may need about 4 cards from the new set, and you are set to go. So if you have a set 1 deck, you are basically mostly done. However, I will be going in detail for all of my card choices for those of you who perhaps have not played Orfist and maybe want to pick up the deck for yourselves. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And I'm going to start, of course, with the Ride deck. And that has not changed at all from set 1, but we still want to explain our card choices anyway because there's quite a bit going on here that some people may not have thought about. We first start with our starter, of course, the Link Joker version of Salamangreat Balinx. This card has the same exact effect as every single other starter in the game, so if you wanted to play the police girl, you could, but he's just so adorable and wholesome, and I just want a plushie of him. Someone make that happen, please. Next up for our grade 1 in the Ride deck, we have Cardinal Noid Routus. Now, this card has a very simple, yet in my opinion, slightly busted effect. When placed on V, which of course it will because it's a part of the Ride deck, you get to search your deck for any World Order card and add it to your hand. And this can be any order from set 1 or 2 with the World subtype. You can search In the Darkness That Nobody Knows for some free retiring. You can search Hallowing Moonlit Night if you just want a card draw. And you can search the New Order for a very, very fun combo that I will explain later down the line. Next up in the grade 2 spot is Cardinal Noid Kubisia. This card is actually better than people give it credit for. I used to think it was the worst thing on the planet because all it does is give 5k. However, the unit you give 5k can be a grade 1 with 8k power, turning it into a 13k beater on a grade 2 Vanguard. And this can actually matter immensely. If your opponent is on grade 1 and you're going first on your grade 2 turn, you now have a 13k beater against their 8k base, which, as we all probably know, is going to be 10k to guard, but there are no 10k shields in this format for the most part, therefore they will have to use 2 cards from hand or a 15k shield to stop the attack. For those of you who do not know, Orfist is mainly an Ooga Booga Rush deck for the first 2 turns of the game. That is how you're supposed to play it. You need to put them at high damage very early, because later in the game with your big numbers, if they have only 1 or 2 damage, they'll just tank your hits and your big numbers will essentially mean nothing. They need to be threatening in order for the deck to be effective. Therefore, you need to make it so that they're trying to avoid lethal at every turn of the game as soon as you hit grade 3. To do so, you need to Ooga Booga Rush them to death. Kubisia really does assist in doing that. Once again, we used to play more copies of this in the main deck, but he was power crept out by a card from set 2, and we will talk about that once we get there. But for the Ride deck, he is still very important, and we need to play him. And for the grade 3, the boy himself, Cardinal Deus Orfist. Oh man, where do I start with this card? It has 2 very simple yet powerful effects. The first one being, if you have 1 or 2 orders on the field, it doesn't matter which, you can give him plus 5k. The other one being, if you have 2 orders on the field, that being the Abyssal Dark Knight status, you can create 3 tokens for the cost of 2 Counterblast. These tokens have 15k power and are able to boost. So essentially what you do is you Ooga Booga aggro them from the start, don't call any boosters, and then in the late game, if they didn't deal with your rear guards, you can create an entire back row of 15k boosters to make your numbers incredibly large and incredibly threatening. They'll be at high damage because you rushed them, and they'll have to deal with your 30k columns with multiple cards from their hands, and they will not be able to keep up with the raw advantage you are generating from having such a big beat stick. Not only that, but if they manage to deal with perhaps your front row rear guards, or maybe one of your tokens, or if you use the effect of a certain card from set 2 we'll talk about, during your next turn you'll have 3 open rear guard circles, and you can counterblast 2 to once again make some tokens. And that is a 4 counterblast play, but we have cards like Bulba Mine to help with that problem. It's very simple, very powerful, very effective, and very scary once you get Persona riding with the 3 copies we have in the main deck. Speaking of the main deck, we of course have the 3 Orfists, like I just said, for obvious reasons. We want a Persona ride, and his abilities are the exact same as the copy in the Ride deck, and 2 copies of Lightning Thief Monster Jobatail. This card used to be pretty bad in my eyes, and then I started facing against my Magnolia matchups and wanting this in every single match that I played. 2 copies because he's not always necessary, but you do like having him, and I had 2 spots left in the deck, so I thought, hey, what the heck, why not throw this in there? If I don't need him in a matchup, I can just discard him to a Perfect Guard, or I can discard him to a Ride deck. If your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, this card can attack the entire column, and for those of you who do not know the column attack rulings, they will not be able to guard both of the attacks with 1 Guardian. They will need to call individual Guardians for each card that is being attacked. So if you attack 2 units, and they call down 15k in order to protect one of their units, the other one is still going to be retired unless they call down more Guardians. Therefore, it's just generating mad amounts of advantage by swinging card advantage in your favor with just 1 attack that doesn't cost any resources. Very simple, very powerful. I see people playing the new on-hit draw 1 from set 2 instead of this card, but I don't know why you do that. That card can be staved off with just 1 set of Guardians, whereas this guy needs 2 if they want to stave off any attacks, and if they don't stave off both of them, he will take 2 cards with him. You can play more copies. In fact, you can actually take this out for the grade 3 order since we are not playing it in this build if you feel like that would be more beneficial for your game plan. Next up, looking at the grade 2s, let's talk about all our orders at once. We are talking about Howling Moonlit Knight. This card is being played at 4 copies because it's so good and so effective. This card basically says, when played, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card, basically evening itself out at a flat 0 in card advantage, unless you searched off Routus, in which case it is a flat +1, and it's great when you resolve that effect. However, the other order we may want to add off of Routus's effect is the new grade 2 order from set 2. Ladies and gentlemen, this card basically makes the deck a lot more powerful than it already is. In fact, I don't understand why we didn't get this in set 1. This card is amazing. Eclipsed Moonlight. Now, this card, oh boy, it's very simple. When played, counterblast 1, you make a token on your grade 2 turn for 1 counterblast. Now, this does mean that your attacks become even bigger and more threatening, but it also puts a card on the rearguard circle, so you don't have to commit from hand as much. You can either make it a 15k booster, or you can call it to the front row rearguard and have it be a 15k attacker against a grade 2 Vanguard, meaning they need 10k to guard. Or, if you have 2 cards that we're really going to talk about later in your hand at the beginning of the game, you can do an incredibly powerful combo that we will talk about once we reveal those 2 cards in this list. We are only playing 2 copies because I only want to resolve it once, and we can search it off of Routus. Therefore, I only think that 2 is necessary because Routus is so freaking powerful. Next up on the grade 2 spot, I believe this is the only other grade 2 we're playing, Cardinal Draco Alviderd. And oh man, do we have a lot to talk about. This is the card that power crypt Kubisia, and for very good reason. If your world is Dark Knight, which means you can control 1 order, he gets 2k power, turning him into a 12k beatstick on grade 2. But if you have 2 orders, he gets 5k instead of 2, turning him into a 15k beatstick. Meaning, if you have a token behind him, he becomes a 30k column on your grade 3 turn, and that is quite threatening, but not as threatening as his last effect. After he attacks, you can retire a token in order to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. And this effect is completely free other than sacking a token, which Orfist already makes 3 with 2 counterblast, so that's already a +1 in card advantage, meaning if you sack 1 off for Alviderd, you're already making your opponent minus for absolutely no reason. This card can also hit anything on the field, not just the front row like the grade 3 order says, which is why I decided to cut the grade 3 order entirely, because I only really need 1 or 2 retires throughout the entire game with this deck. And Alviderd certainly gives me that and much more. So we are of course playing 4, and it feels good to be playing 4 of this card rather than 3 of Kubisia because, you know, we had 1 copy in the Ride deck back in set 1. Next up, we have 4 copies of Bulbamine. Now, people have been telling me that I should probably be playing the Countercharger from set 2 instead of Bulbamine, and I entirely disagree. Because when it comes to taking a body off the board to countercharge, I would rather take an 8k off the board rather than a 15k, because that is an entire 7k power that I am removing for a single countercharge if I go with the new card. Sure, it's not one use like Bulbamine is, but in my opinion, I really don't use that much counterblast with Orfist, maybe 5 throughout the entire game, meaning 1 Bulbamine is enough and 2 is absolutely perfect. I just really don't think we need as much countercharging as people say we do, and we do not need to be playing both cards. We only need one of them, and I chose Bulbamine because, well, A, I spent money for him, I'ma use him, and B, I just think he's better than the other card in every way. Call him behind a token, get a boost in, shove him into your soul, and countercharge 1, then sack the front row token for Alviderd in order to retire a rear guard, and mwah, that is a beautiful combo. For Perfect Guard, because we absolutely have to. This has been a staple since the beginning of Vanguard's history, so we need to play 4 of this. And 3 Useful Recharger. This card was actually at 4 in the set 1 deck, but I cut it down to 3 because I don't want to see this in the early game. I really don't want to open with this. Its effect is very simple. When placed on Guardian Circle, you can Counterblast 1 in order to get plus 10k shield if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, or if it's just Dark Knight, you can get plus 5k shield, but I only use this when I can make it a 15k shield because 10k shield isn't really important in my opinion. Plus 15k is bigger than 10, and if I need a 10k shield, later stages of the game, I can still use this card regardless, or just a 15k shield in my hand. This card is really only good in the late game in my opinion, which is why I'm playing 3, because again, I do not want to open with it, and if I do open with it, I'm discarding it for the ride deck. And like I said, it being a counterblast is not an issue, because most of the time, you're tanking hits from your opponent anyway, and you'll get the counterblast during their turn, or you can use a Bulba Mine to set it up from the get-go. And the last grade 1 in the deck is the brand new Cardinal Noid Thumbmerino. Oh man, does she fix a lot of the issues I had with this deck's early game. I used to think she was busted because I thought she said retire all other of your rear guards in the same column as this unit and draw a card. So, you know, she'd eat a token and then you draw a card, but she retires herself as well, so I thought she sucked, and then I played with her more and I found out she was busted. Thumbmerino has a very simple, powerful effect. When it boosts a token, it gets plus 15k power, meaning you create a 30k column, and then it retires everything in the column in order to draw a card. So she takes herself and the token off the board in order to draw a card. The combo that I've been talking about this entire time is Bulba Mine, her, and that's it, because you can search out the grade 2 order that makes tokens off of Raudus' effect. Ride to grade 2 with Kubisia, call Bulba Mine behind Kubisia, and then call Thumbmerino in one of the back rows that isn't behind the Vanguard. Activate the order, call a token, give 5k to Kubisia himself, swing in with Kubisia plus Bulba Mine, do your drive check, whatever happens, happens. Bulba Mine goes into Soul, you countercharge 1, getting back that counterblast you used for the order, and then Thumbmerino boosts the token for 38k, and then the whole column goes away and you draw a card, and you now no longer have a front row, meaning if your opponent wants to damage deny you because they're scared of Orfist, they will have to not attack you at all, therefore missing out on any drive checks. And 38k is a big number and very hard to guard, and if your opponent has been guarding like a complete monkey, this will put them at 3 or 4 damage right from the get-go, meaning your late game is now threatening. Thumbmerino is also amazing in the late game if you have Alviderd and 3 tokens. Alviderd to the front, Thumbmerino to the other back, call 3 tokens, use Alviderd's effect to retire the token behind the Vanguard, retire a rear guard, Thumbmerino attacks, retire that token and Thumbmerino to draw a card and make a big number. Then, on your next turn, because you have 3 open rear guard circles, you can in fact counterblast 2 to make 3 more tokens and get a full board. Thumbmerino makes this deck a lot more flexible and makes its early game a lot more threatening. Therefore, for the rest of time, and I cannot see this card getting power crept at all, you will need to play 4 copies. Last but not least is our trigger lineup. We are of course playing 7 crits, and we are playing 4 of the Cardinal Draco because it looks beautiful, and 3 of the Police Girl because she is the literal only other option for critical triggers. Bushiroad, please make it so that I can play anything but this. Thank you. The other 4 triggers in the deck are going to be 4 copies of the front trigger, which is a new addition from set 2. And this card has, yet again, a very simple but powerful effect. If it's placed on Guardian Circle and your opponent is at grade 3 or greater, you can give it plus 5k, making it a 20k shield, and man, are you going to need that 20k shield. Not only does the shield get bigger, which makes fronts better than draws in every capacity, but fronts are also very, very, very threatening triggers. On the offensive, it turns your base numbers into Persona Ride numbers, and your Persona Ride numbers into even bigger numbers. Not only that, but on the defensive, it can protect your entire front row as opposed to just your Vanguard, which can matter because if your Vanguard has higher power, the opponent will go after the rear guards, and you really need your rear guards in this deck. So yeah, fronts are amazing. The new shield value gives Orfist even more late game potential, and I am playing 4 of them as a result. 4 heals because this is Card Fight Vanguard and you must play 4 heals. And last but not least, the 1 copy of the Over Trigger because we have to. I really don't like playing this card, but it is just so powerful that you have to put it in your deck. That is a requirement, but it doesn't feel bad to draw it like most decks feel. If you draw it, that is a 50k shield in your hand, and checking it offensively really doesn't actually matter because your numbers are already super threatening. If you check it offensively, you're just winning more. What you really want this card for is the 50k shield or the 5th heal trigger that ends your opponent's turn. Therefore, in this deck, I feel like the over trigger is good for every single reason except the reason that other decks want their over triggers for, and that is checking it offensively. So for that reason, we play 1. We're not playing the Cray Element 1 because that one's actually just garbage, but this one, I mean, it doubles your power and crit, so what more can I say? So that is the Orfist deck profile. I know a lot of you have been begging me on Facebook to make this thing, and, well, here you go. The set 2 deck profile for Orfist. I've been testing this a lot. I really feel like this is the best way to play the deck. If you have any disagreements, though, throw them in the comments down below, because I love talking Orfist theory. I love talking about this deck just in general. It's such a fun deck to build, such a fun deck to play. It's also very easy to pilot, so it's great for beginners. Not only is it great for beginners, but it's one of those things where it's easy to learn, hard to master. And once you master this deck, you are certain to curb stomp any Bruce and Bastion players at your locals, because they probably only picked up the deck because it was best deck in format, and they don't know how to actually play the deck. Without further ado, like I said, comment down below, tell me what your Orfist lists look like. I'd love to see them. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see when my next videos are coming out, and be sure to hit that bell, because I got a lot of big projects coming out that I really want to show you guys, like the Overdressed anime video, the overdressed format video, and a surprise video. Jabron, if you're watching, I'm still working on that video, buddy. Don't you worry. And if you really want to go that extra distance, you can help support me on Patreon to make these videos come out a lot faster. The links are all down in the description below. You can also follow me on Twitter at TaiSensei-sama to see me complain about video games and complain about art in general. But with that being said, once again, I'm Premium Chad of Team Galaxy Brain, and I will see you guys later. Remember, be good people.